So we are in the middle of chapter 46. We are discussing in chapter 46 how much God loves us. And when we focus on that, when we experience it, when we realize and feel God's love for us, we automatically, work free. Don't we love that concept? Effort free. We love God. And the more we see his love for us, for me, the more it's a very personal thing, the more I love God. As I'm experiencing his love, I love him. So that was the opening point of the chapter. And then we spoke of the parable of the king pulling the vagabond out of the garbage and bringing him back into the palace. We explained in great detail that that's us and God. As a nation, that happened when God personally came into the filth, absolute evil of Egypt to pull us out of that garbage. And on a personal level, we personally experience it. We personally feel God's love. And as we focus on his love, and we focus more on his love, and we train ourselves to notice his love, and I suggested record it, journal it, find time in prayer to contemplate it, make it something you do in the beginning every day, make it something you do before you go to sleep. Find the times that work and really structure into your life, noting God's kindnesses, feeling God's love, because then we just love him. After developing that whole concept, the Rebbe said, based on this, we can understand the liturgy, the text of the classical blessing on a commandment, which is in the Hebrew, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvosav, he who has sanctified us in his commandments. And the word Kiddishanu is the word the Rebbe is focusing on and really giving even three explanations, three levels of what does this mean, Kiddishanu? What happens when a Jew studies Torah, when a Jew does a commandment? And the first level of explanation we said was, it's like marriage, right? The moment under the chuppah when the groom says to the bride, Harei at mikudeshes li. Same etymology, same root word. Kiddishanu mikudeshes, kedusha, kadosh. We said, well, why do we say Harei at mikudeshes li? What does that mean? Mikudeshes li, kedusha, holiness means separate. We're separate from the rest of the world. You're mine, I'm yours, we're separate. It's just the two of us. And that is in essence what we're saying to God when we do a commandment. Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvosav, God and the Jew, God and I have become one. A fusion, an intimacy, a union, the marriage. Every time we do a mitzvah, we're fused, we're kadosh. We're that close, we're that intimate, we're that one. That was the first explanation. And then the Rebbe said, and there's something even higher than this, which is when we serve God, and this was what we're in the middle of, we're actually literally in the middle of reading this idea. When we serve God, when we do the commandment, when we study his Torah, we become elevated to his level. Meaning the first explanation, God is coming down to me. My service draws God to me, and there's a fusion, there's an intimacy, there's a union. At the same time, my service elevates me to him. I become his kadosh, right? We are holy because God is kadosh, ki kadosh ani. That Hashem is on the level of kadosh. He's on that level of supernal holiness. So the Jew doing the mitzvah ascends to God's level, which is an amazing, crazy thing to say, except it's written in Tanya, so I can say it. But if you think about it, it's like, what? I become on the level of God when I'm doing his commandment, when I'm studying his Torah? I mean, like, that's a bit much. It's true. That's actually what's happening. We actually had this earlier in Tanya. In chapter 23, we said something along these lines that happens when a Jew studies Torah. It's very deep intimacy of Torah. And in chapter 25, we also brought in something similar when we serve God through the commandments. In essence, what's happening is, because I become one with God, as per the first explanation, the fusion, the intimacy, I become elevated to his level. Because God is one, in essence, with all. Meaning, I look at this world. I don't see God. There's a lot of levels and barriers between me and God. Well, what are all those levels? All those levels are what we call, generically, tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is a generic Kabbalistic term for all the contractions, all the barriers, all the things that make us feel that we are so far from God. What is fueling all that symptom? God. He fuels everything. He fuels the revelation. He fuels the concealment. He is the revelation. He is the concealment. So the concealment is operative for me because I'm here and there's all these barriers between me and him, so to speak, if we want to make it very visual and concrete and spatial, which of course God is not, but whatever, we'll make it for our brains. I'm here, God's there, and there's all the barriers in between. But when I'm doing the commandment, when I'm studying the Torah, I'm one with him. Harei mikudeshesli. God and I have become one. So if I'm one with the source of the constrictions, with the source of the barriers, of the tzimtzum not operative for God, it's not operative for me. So I feel I'm so far, how could I be on his level? But when I'm learning the Torah, when I'm doing the mitzvah, God and I are one. If God and I are one and I'm one with God, and God is the source of constriction, I also become one with the source of constriction. So then constriction is not a barrier for me. God's infinite, and my soul also has that infinite energy, God's energy. And then the Rebbe takes it even further, which I don't think we touched on because we didn't read that far, and says beyond Hareyat Mikudeshesli, beyond the marriage, the intimacy, the fusion achieved each time we serve God, and beyond bringing us up, that we ascend to his level, to infinity, there's also God as the ultimate kadosh. As we said, kadosh, kedusha, holiness, is from the concept of kadosh, separate. Because all of creation is creation, as versus God. But when I'm serving and I'm one and we're so intimate and we're so fused and I'm on his level, I'm also part of that kadosh. Him and me. And then all of creation. That level of separation. That level of distinction. Just as we said on the first explanation. The husband and wife are separate. And then there's the rest of the world. Ultimately, God is separate from everything. And when the Jew is serving, it's God and the Jew, separate from everything. So let's read that inside. So we are on page Samach Vav. We are 9 lines from the top. Ki al yedei yichud. I'm just wondering if I should start there, actually. Let me see. Just to explain where we're starting in the reading. So we just read the first level, the Harei at Mikudeshesli level. That's why before commandment we say Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav, because through each commandment, through our study of Torah, we become married, one, intimate, fused with God. And then the Rebbe started the second explanation. Actually, let me go there. It's like 2.5 lines above. So now we're doing the second explanation. The Kedushi Lashon Havdalah. Kedusha is, in essence, separation. Masha Kadosh Baruch Hu Muvdal Me'ha'olamos. God is separate from all of creation. V'hi b'china sovev kol almin. This level of God as separate is the level of sovev. Of course, in Tanya, we speak very often of the concept of mimale and sovev. Mimale, the energy of God that's small enough to be within the details and not overwhelm them, and not nullify them, wipe them away by the intensity. And sovev, which would do exactly that. So conceptually, sovev is distant. It's not spatially distant, but conceptually it's distant, it's remote, it's operating from afar. So the energy could impact creation, could vivify creation, but not get close enough to form the details because it's too powerful for those details. So God, in his separate beyond, that's sovev. And that's level. Ein Sof, infinity, sovev, encompassing. That's the level the Jew is on. That's the level I'm on and you're on when we're serving him. That's what we mean, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav. You brought us to this level of Kedusha, to your level of separation from all. She Kedushaso Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Kedusha of Hashem himself, b'chvodo u'va'atzmo, in his essence, in his being. The Kedusha hi lashon havdalah. Now this idea of Kedusha, again here, it's very nuanced, but we really have 2 levels going on. We have the level of us ascending to be one with the infinity of God, with Soviv Kol Almin. And now we're taking it even a step higher. Our separation from all because we're one with Him. So Kedusha in essence means separation. God is separate from all of creation. This level of Soviv Kol Almin. Too powerful, too intense, can't get inside of them. So not only do I have this intimacy with God, not only am I raised to His level, I'm raised to this point of it's me and God, separate from everything else. Because through the first level explanation, the fusion of the soul, of her being comprised in the light of God, in the light of infinity, she becomes on that level. If you're one with God, you become on the level of God because, as I said, you're one with the source of barriers, so barriers are inoperative. So there's no barriers. So you and God are absolutely one, beyond everything else. Because you've become one, you become fused, you become part of Him Himself, of God Himself. Literally, like we say, the phrase you become literally one, is discussing a man and a woman, an intimacy. And so the Rebbe is utilizing that phrase to again express how one, how intently one. That's why we said when King Solomon wanted to express the oneness of the Jew and God, he chose the best parable he could, though it's really a poor parable, which is the intimacy, the bond of a man and a woman, of a husband and a wife. Because it's a poor parable, because these are two physical human beings that therefore have very independent lives, can physically be separate from each other, no problem, for great stretches of time, but yet can fuse to be one flesh. By God and the Jew, it's much, much, much more than that. It's much more than that. We're so much closer. We're so much more intertwined that we literally become His level. You don't become your spouse's level. Your spouse is Him and you are you. But there's that point of connection. By us and God, it's not just a point of connection. We become Him. We become His level of Kadosh. We become separate as He is separate. But in our physical world, it's a good parable. So we're starting off with this fusion, this intimacy, this oneness, which therefore means I'm raised to His level, which therefore means, as He is, so am I, separate from all of creation, just one with Him. So it's almost like the third level goes back to the first and deepens it, which creates a deeper second, which creates an even deeper third, which goes back to the first. Because all of these are very intertwined concepts, all expressing in essence how close we are with God. Why are we talking about this? Because appreciate God's enormous love for us, that He's willing to do this, that He's willing to be one with us. I mean, we know who we are. We might not know who everyone else is, but we know ourselves. We know our pettiness, smallness, our not such pretty sides, our not such refined aspects of self. And yet God has such love for us that that's irrelevant. He embraces us entirely. He takes us in. He raises us to His level. He brings us beyond constriction. He brings us beyond relationship to world because He loves us that much. That's the point. That's why we're bringing this in here. So now we're quoting a pasuk. We actually can see we have 3 verses here. V'yisem li kedoshim, and you will be for me kadosh. You, the Jew, you will also be kadosh. Ki kadosh ani, because I, Havaya, because I, God, am kadosh. You will be kadosh. You will be on that level of sanctity. You will be on that level of infinity. You will be on that level beyond constriction, because I, God, am kadosh, because that's my level. If I'm fused with you, you're fused with me. If we're one, you're on my level. I drew you up to where I am. I'm kadosh, you're kadosh. And then, separating you from the nations to be li. It says whenever the word li is used, me, mine, it means eternity, forever. And it says, and you shall do all the commandments, And you will be, again, the same word, kadosh. You will be kadosh to your God. I am your God. Perush means to say, ki ayde kim ha-mitzvahs, when you do the commandments, hareini elokash lachem, I am yours. Then I am your God. You personalized me. You made me yours. You're taking possession of me. It became personalized. Taking possession of. Not God in the abstract. My God. Which happened because of the enormous nullification the forefathers, the patriarchs, had to God, that they were literally nullified and comprised in his energy. So I just read a lot, actually. What the Rebbe here is doing is the Rebbe brought in, really in essence, 3 verses, because these verses are supporting these 3 points that we just established. Again, we said we make a blessing, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvaysav, and the Rebbe is pulling out of kiddishanu all these concepts. Kiddishanu, like the marriage. Kiddishanu, we're raised to the level of God's kadosh. Kiddishanu, we're even higher, we're separate from all. So now the Rebbe brought in verses that are fleshing out and supporting these concepts. The first verse says, V'yisem li kiddoshin, ki kadosh ani havaya. You will be kadosh, that's the word we're using, li, for me. Li again means, it says about the word li, when we say li, eino zaz la'olam, which really means it's not about us, it's about him. Meaning, when we're raised to this level, we're on the level of li, that God's saying it's not the specificity of this action of this moment, it's just the relationship. You did serve. That's why we have this opportunity. But now that we have this opportunity, I'm bringing you far higher, so to speak, than your service should have engendered. It's like speaking in terms of Elul. I don't know, it seems like wherever I look, the Rebbe brings out the same concept about Elul. We start off with this, God's arousal from above to energize us. And then we do the work of Elul, ani l'doidi, and then we have the response, doidi li. I'm reaching out to God, and then doidi li, my beloved is mine. I am to my beloved, I reach out to God, doidi li, God responds. So we started off with an arousal from above. We call it sarusa de la'ela in Kabbalistic language. That arousal from above, that energy, is empowering me to do my grunt work, to work in the field, to come closer to God, to introspect, to do a soul searching, to repent. Ani l'doidi, I'm reaching out to my beloved. And because I'm reaching out, God responds. V'dodi li, and my beloved is to me. And the response of God to my work is even greater than the initial power he gave me before I started my work. But it doesn't end there. Because afterwards, after God responds to my work, there's an even higher level of God coming down. Not as per my work, but because I created a space of fusion, me reaching out to him, him responding to me, he can come. A much higher level of God can come. A level I can't possibly elicit through my service, but a level that now feels welcome because of my service. So we have here in this paradigm of Elul, 3 levels of God reaching out to me. He reaches out beforehand to give me the power to work. Then he reaches out in response to my work. And then he reaches out a higher level that no way could be responding to my work. It's too high for my work, but it's coming because of my work. So I'm bringing that in, besides of course being very timely, to explain this concept. Li. Li means such a level that we're calling it eternity. What am I doing right now that's creating this eternity between me and God? Nothing really. I'm doing something very transient. This moment I'm focused, the next moment I spaced out, or I stopped, or I did something else, I moved on. By me it's not eternal, by me it's very transient. Everything is very transient. But yet, that movement of reaching out to God is so precious to him that he's lifting me up to a level that's way beyond what my work should have engendered. Way beyond what I'm doing should cause. So I have that first level of relationship of the bond, of the fusion. I'm serving him, I'm one with him. But then we have the levels 2 and 3 of him lifting me up to him, which isn't really as per what I did, but I'm kadosh. You're so intimate with me. Come, be mine. Be on my level. Enjoy this level of God. Be kadosh as well. So that first verse that we quoted there, you will be kadosh because I am kadosh, is the second level of closeness here, where God lifts us up not to where we deserve, not to what we created, not to something that's really coming from my work. He lifts me up to him. I'm kadosh. You're going to be kadosh because you're mine. And then it gets even higher. Right? I'm separating you, that highest level of kadosh, to be li. I'm separate from creation. I'm separate from everything. I'm God. You're one with me. You're mine. We're one. I'm separate. We're separate. You're separate. I'm kadosh. You're kadosh. Kadosh on the level of holiness. Even higher, the second verse, kadosh on the level of separate, beyond everything, just me and God. And then the Rebbe gave the third verse, which actually I don't know why. We're going back now to the first level, maybe because this is all a spiraling effect. I don't know. Because now we don't have the word li anymore. We're not on that level. We're talking about our work makes God ours. As the verse says, now it gets back to our work. You will do all my commandments. V'yisim kedoshim, we have that same word, but now it's kadosh, like harei at mikudeshes li. You'll be kadosh. You'll be mine. We're married. We're fused. We're intimate. Ani havaya Elokechem. I am God, your God. I have become yours. That's the power of what we're doing, that we make God ours. And the Rebbe says, how can we say this? Well, because that's what it says. And look what Abraham accomplished, and Isaac and Jacob, the God of Abraham. No, he's God. He's not possessive, like, possessed by. He's not so small, he's the God of Abraham. He's God. Well, of course he's God. But because of Abraham's service, he's the God of Abraham. He's the God of Isaac. So what was so special about their service? So as it says many times in Tanya, obviously this is something the Rebbe really wants us to understand and try to aspire to. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were God's chariot. That's the Kabbalistic term. That's what it says in the Zohar, the most foundational work of Kabbalah, about the patriarchs. They were God's chariot. What does it mean, a chariot? A chariot means you have no independent will. Your car doesn't drive on its own, hopefully. You can't say, oops, I really meant to stop, officer, but my car wouldn't let me, The chariot goes where the driver takes it. So when we say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were the chariots of God, that meant they completely subsumed their will in God's will. And every time we serve, in a small way, we're God's chariot as well. Because I wouldn't be doing this on my own, I wouldn't be giving away all this money to charity on my own. I wouldn't be putting up these boxes on my doorpost on my own. I wouldn't be dressing this way on my own. I wouldn't be eating this and not this and eating this now and eating this later. I wouldn't be doing all these things. Why am I doing it? Because it's the will of God. Now, obviously, if something is very challenging and very stressful, we feel it like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to wear this like this and this heat, but God, this is your will. Here I am. And sometimes we don't feel it at all because it's just part of our reality. Even when we don't feel it, and of course, especially when we do, on a certain level, we're self-sacrificing our will for God's. That's what we say, Mesiras Nefesh, the Hebrew term for self-sacrifice, which of course, in its full-blown expression is a Jew dying for God, a Jew dying because he's a Jew, a soldier dying to protect Israel. That also really means Mesiras. Mesira means giving up. Nefesh, we think of the soul of the life. It means the will. Mesiras Haratzon. Mesiras Nefesh, dying for God. Mesiras Nefesh, Giving up my will for God's will. So when I'm dressing a certain way because that's what he wants, that's self-sacrifice. That's Mesiras Nefesh. That's giving up my will for God's will. When I'm giving away money to charity that obviously every one of us could rather need that money in their pocket, that's Mesiras Nefesh. That's self-sacrifice. That's giving up my will for God's will. So therefore, on a certain level, we also have this chariot concept. Now, obviously, it's very different. I mean, we're not, as we said, such fools to fool ourselves. By Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they didn't have their own will. Their will was God's will, completely. And anything they did, it was always a pure, no filters, no barriers expression of the will of God. But yes, it's not exactly like that. But we are at the same time, on a certain level, crushing our will for God. We absolutely are. So we are, on a certain level, the chariot. And of course, it's different because by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were a chariot every second of their existence. We're a chariot in the moments we are serving. But Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their entire being, every cell in their body was a chariot to God. By us, it's that specific body part engaged in the service. So at this moment, we are all God's chariot. We're all studying his Torah. This is it. This is pure. This is Torah. There's no other benefit you get from coming to this class, but this is God's will. He wants his Torah to be studied. And we are his chariot. We're putting aside our will. Do we need to clean our kitchens? Do we need to do work in our house? Do we need to do other work? Do we need to be on our computer? Do we need to be scrolling through our messages? Do we need to be responding to texts? Do we need to be trying to head to bed? We're putting aside our will. This is what God wants, that his Torah should be studied. So I'm also a chariot now. Not my entire body, the parts of my body engaged in the study. Maybe my ears, for me, my mouth, parts of speech, eyes, if you're looking, your brain, your understanding, your conceptualizing. So every specific part of you, if it's your ears and your hearing and your brain and your thinking and your eyes and your looking, all of those parts are chariots. Not your whole body like by the patriarchs, but all of those parts are chariots. And by us, it's not every second of our existence. It's exactly precisely when we're serving. But right now we're serving. It's good news. And right now there are parts of us that are absolutely God's chariot. Because I put my will aside, whatever else I should be doing at this moment, for his will. The patriarchs totally subsumed their will. They had no will. They totally gave their will over to God. By me, in a smaller way, but absolutely, I'm putting aside my will for him. So therefore, just as by Abraham and by Isaac, it's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. God allows himself to become small enough, so to speak, to be the God of, not God, the God of. So much love, so much closeness. The God of, well, they're the chariot. They're absolutely nullified. The Rebbe is saying, and us too. We're also the chariot. We also have nullification. So God is also ours, which is the point the Rebbe is saying here. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I am God, your God, not just God, the God of the patriarchs. I'm your God every single time you serve me. I've been talking for a long time. Any questions, any thoughts, any reflections on any of this? Okay, I'll keep going. V'kacha hu b'chol nefesh miYisrael. So just as we are saying the patriarchs, completely nullified, have no independent will, their entire body, every second of their existence is God's chariot, so too with every single Jew. B'shas esek haTorah v'mitzvos. Not always, and not with our entire body, but the moments of service, with those body parts of service, we are God's chariot as well. God of Abraham, God of us. So much love and closeness to Abraham, so much love and closeness to us. And therefore, chivu razal, our sages obligated, lakum v'la'amod mipnei kol osek b'mitzvah, to stand up before anyone who is in the process of doing a commandment. Even if he's a very simple person, even if he's a very ignorant person. What am I standing in front of him for? V'hainu, You know why? Mipnei havaya hashochen umislabesh benafsho b'sha'azu. You're standing in front of God. And God is right now within this person. He's indwelling in this person at the moment of the commandment. So if we can envision a simple Jew, we can envision a simple Jew. And he's actively serving God. Well, I'm standing in front of him. I'm standing in front of God, who is absolutely intimately one with him because he's serving him right now. That's how real this is supposed to be. So you could say, whoa, this is so real? Yes, it is. Really happens? Absolutely. I have this marriage going on between me and God. I'm elevated to God's level of sanctity. I'm elevated to God's level of separation. That's so weird. I don't feel a thing. What amazing things are going on, and I'm totally clueless. The Rebbe says, yeah, deliberate design. The soul doesn't feel it. Not on a level that you can feel. You can't feel this. If you could feel it, you will be so overwhelmed by the experience, you would cease to exist. It can't happen in any of the upper realms because they would feel it, and therefore they would cease to exist. It's not just us because we're physical and human. No angel could experience this. The greatest, Malach Michael, Gabriel, they can't experience it. The spiritual worlds can't experience this. Not Atzilus either. Nothing can experience this and survive. And me, simple Jew, small person, I have no clue. The Rebbe says exactly. That's why God can have this level with you. That's why he can have this relationship. Because you have no clue. If you can imagine, I don't know if there's a great metaphor for it, but if you can imagine like, I don't know, a very, very important person in our world, makes most people important, very powerful, very wealthy, very noble, make it during the times of the kings and queens, the royal family, whatever. And they don't have any friends. Because anyone who knows who they are can't be a real friend with them. A very famous star can't be a real friend. Because on some level, you're conscious of the money, you're conscious of the power, you're conscious of the royalty, you're conscious of the perks you get in this relationship. So even if you're trying to have a real relationship, you're not a user. You're not at all doing this to be a user. But on a certain level, you know who this other person is. And therefore, there's a certain loneliness this other person has. Because they can't have that real, honest connection to another person. There's always, the other person always has some, this is so cool, I'm friends with this person. So when could they have a real friend? If they go incognito. If they're in disguise. If it's a camouflage. If they become friends with someone who truly doesn't know who they are. And then isn't overwhelmed by who they are. And they could be friends. Sort of a mushel for this concept. All of the upper worlds, they know, they feel, they know what God is. They could never have this intimacy. They would literally cease to exist. Literally, they would dissolve, break down their existence from the enormity of being that close with God. But we're like oblivious. We could be the real friend because we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening, and therefore it can happen. And therefore, we don't have the wow factor that would destroy this intimacy from happening. Raksha ein nafsha margeshes. We don't feel it. We don't feel it, as we just explained. Why we don't feel it and why we can't feel it and why it's beneficial that we don't feel it. The special thing is, by Mashiach, we're going to be here, physical bodies, souls in physical bodies, in a physical world, with all the opportunity to serve God that we have now, and we will feel it. We will experience everything I just spoke about. The intimacy, the level of God's sanctity, the level of separation. All of those levels will be happening, and we'll feel it. That's Mashiach. But for now, we don't feel a thing. because of this barrier, the obstruction of this coarse material existence, which is not refined, and it darkens the eyes of the soul, from seeing the visions of God that are happening. Unlike the patriarchs, that they, as physical people, however physical they were, they could serve, and at a certain level, they saw, they experienced. They had Mashiach. They already had a Mashiach reality. We say in this world, in Olam Hazeh, in this physical reality, they saw their world. They saw the real world. They saw what we call Olam Haba. In Olam Hazeh, they saw Olam Haba. In this world, they experienced and saw the next world. There's a famous story of a great holy Jew who was actually little older than and very close to the Alter Rebbe, whose Tanya we are studying now. His name was Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Haradok, a great Hasidic leader who lived at the time of the Alter Rebbe, though he was considerably older than him. And the Alter Rebbe was very close to him. And at a certain point, Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Haradok left the Ukraine and he went to Eretz Yisrael. He went to Israel, and the Alter Rebbe actually wanted to join him, but God didn't want, so he turned back. So he was in Israel. Rabbi Nachman Mendel Harduk was in Israel. I believe he was in Tzfas. And at that time, it might not have been Tzfas, it was somewhere in the north. And somebody, some crazy person, went on the mountains outside Jerusalem, Har Zaysim, and blew shofar. Which, according to the verses, according to the prophecies, this is Mashiach. The shofar will be heard on Har Zaysim. So right away, the news spread all over Israel. I mean, Israel's a very small place, and there weren't too many Jews in it at that time at all. So whatever few communities, which probably basically was Jerusalem and Tzfas, the news quickly jumped. Mashiach's here. I mean, the shofar blew on Har Zaysim. So the followers, the disciples, the Hasidim ran to Rabbi Nachman Mendel of Harduk to say, is it true? Is Mashiach here? They say that Rabbi Nachman Mendel opened the window, opened his door, went outside, sniffed. He said, no, unfortunately, no. Mashiach's not here. I don't smell him in the air. I would know. Mashiach's not here. So the question on the story is, and why did he have to open the window or open his door or go outside? Why couldn't he have given a sniff in his room? Because in his room, Mashiach was there. In his space, the energy of Mashiach was there. If he wanted to, if Mashiach arrived, he had to go outside. So by the patriarchs and by the great, 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 holy, holy tzaddikim, people of such caliber, they're experiencing Mashiach. In this world, they have the next world. They're human beings, souls and bodies, serving God and experiencing it, surviving that, feeling it on some level. I don't know if it's the totality that we all will experience by Mashiach. I wouldn't know because I'm obviously not there. But they have this experience. They have this sense of what the soul is experiencing, is appreciating, is enjoying. The energy the soul is basking in right now in this world through their service of God. But we don't have that, the Rebbe says, because we have a body that's physical and coarse. There's, in the Hebrew, there's Geshem, Gashmi, which means physicality. And then there's another word, Chomer, Chumri, which also means physicality. But the connotation is a more coarsened physicality. Like the word Chomer, material, is etymologically like the word Chamor, a donkey, a coarse animal. So we're all physical beings, and God wants us to be physical beings. And by Mashiach, we will be physical beings. That's the ultimate, to be physical beings, souls and body, in this physical world, serving God and feeling it. So being physical is not the detriment. But we're not just physical now. We're not just gashmi and physical. Our physicality has become chumri, has become coarsened. And that coarseness is such a blockage that the Rebbe is saying Even the soul can't really experience what's happening now. Forget the body. Forget you. Even the soul has blockages because of the humbrius, the coarseness. So what's going to happen by Mashiach? Well, by Mashiach, the world will revert to as it was, but far better than prior to the primordial sin. And then it wasn't a world that was humri, coarse. It was a world that was gashmi, that was physical. That's what we want. That's what we're going to have. A gashmi, physical world, but no donkeys, no chumri, no coarseness, no barriers. And for the very, very holy, already now, through their service, they have so refined their flesh that it's not chumri. It's gashmi, geshem, physical, but no coarseness, no barriers.